The Sony 20mm f1.8 is, for me, one of Sony's most underrated lenses. I've been using this lens for the last few months and I wanted to share my thoughts on it because it's honestly surprised me so much. This lens has not been spoken about nearly as much as it deserves, and I think that it's a brilliant option for someone out there looking for a fantastic wide prime. I picked up this lens a few months ago and it has become one of my primary lenses. Between this and the 85mm from Sony, I've covered all of my work over the last few months. I've got to say I've been incredibly impressed. One of my favourite things about this is the form factor. This lens is absolutely tiny. It weighs in at just under 400 grams, which makes this lens super compact and very versatile. You can sling this on a gimbal with no problem, and even use some of the smaller gimbals like the DJI RS3 Mini because this lens is so light. It may have a smaller body and be lightweight, but that doesn't mean it's skipped out on build quality. Honestly, the build quality feels like some of Sony's much more expensive lenses, and if it didn't have just the G sticker on here, I would expect it to have a GMaster sticker. It's honestly that good. The smaller body has not skipped out on any of the features. You still have an aperture ring which can be de-clicked, which I think is fantastic for those video shooters. It also has a customizable button, which is fantastic to help you personalize your use case of this lens, as well as an AF/MF switch, which is pretty standard. Finally, you've also got the focus ring, which is focused by wire, but it does have a linear focus system, which is great, and allows you to do those focus pulls pretty well. I picked up my model secondhand, but it's still looking in great nick, and I've already put it through some pretty testing environments, including when I'm out here in Southeast Asia, which is why I'm currently not in my studio. It's been able to deal with the intense humidity that's been out here and the changing weather conditions, and I've had no problems. This lens does feature a small weather sealing gasket. It's not the most impressive one I've seen, but I'm glad to see that it does have at least one. The front filter thread is also not too large. It comes in at 67mm, meaning that most of your larger filters will fit on this lens nice and easily. So that's what's packed into this tiny little lens, but that's no good if it can't perform. So what is it like to shoot with? Well, I've got to say, much like my first impressions of the appearance of this lens, I was also really impressed with its performance. We'll start off talking about photos. Shooting on wider lenses is not something I've always found to be the easiest. I found that when I was learning photography, I often found myself shooting at more telephoto focal lengths. However, shooting photos on the 20mm has been an absolute joy. I've really enjoyed the field of view that 20mm gives you. It's incredibly versatile. It's wide enough to capture a lot inside a scene, but it's also not too wide that you start to find things are incredibly distorted. Of course, 20mm is much more of a wider focal length, but I found it to be a really enjoyable one for photography. I found adding a wider focal length to my photography arsenal has been really enjoyable. This allowed me to experiment with new styles and approaches that I haven't been able to do before, and the performance of the lens has been brilliant. Not only is a wide-angle lens interesting, but this one performs at a really high level. The images are tack sharp and the autofocus is quick, silent and accurate, which I couldn't really ask for anything more. It's also incredibly reliable. I've not had this lens falter in any scenario. It works really well in low light. The f1.8 aperture definitely helps in that regard. Now, one point to talk about: f1.8 and not f1.4. That might seem like a small difference, and to be honest, it really is. I know that some people would prefer the 24mm f1.4 and might prefer it because of that extra tiny bit of light you can get into the lens. But honestly, it's not something I've missed. At no point using this lens, I thought to myself, damn, I wish I had 0.4 more of an f-stop. It really doesn't make that much difference, and honestly, the experience of using this completely makes up for it. Of course, the focal range you're getting is slightly different to the 24mm, so if that's a look you prefer, then you could definitely go with that lens. However, the 20mm look is definitely something I think you should try out. So photos are good, but what about video? this lens has been absolutely exceptional. It's actually one of the main reasons I bought it. Prior to this lens, for my video work, I was using a 28-70 from Sigma. Now, don't get me wrong, I did love that lens, but I was looking for something a little bit wider. Because I'm adding some more vlog style content into my workflow, I wanted a lens that was be able to capture a wider field of view. And this 20mm lens has really fit into that workflow fantastically. It does give me that wider field of view that I was looking for, to be able to fit more into the frame and not make my arm so tired when I'm trying to vlog. Focal length is wide enough that it's not making everything distorted, but it allows you to fit a little bit more in the frame, and I don't have to stretch out my arm too far to be able to get it at a good distance from my face. I find myself reaching for this lens in a lot of scenarios just because I love the look it gives your video. It's a fantastic lens for documentary work. My latest mini doc that I shared last week was shot basically entirely on this lens, between this and the 85mm f1.8, and I loved how this lens looks. It renders colors brilliantly, and how the image looks coming out of this lens is something that I've really enjoyed. Autofocus is equally as reliable, accurate and fast when it comes to the video performance of this lens. It being silent is obviously really important, especially when it comes to vlog style content where you might have a microphone on top of the camera. No one wants to hear that back and forth focusing sound. You'll have no problems with that. This focal length is incredibly versatile, and when you do want to punch in, it's possible to. You can get that kind of 35mm or 30mm look with a 1.5 times crop, which is also fantastic. It adds an extra look to your arsenal that you might not have been able to achieve otherwise. Overall, the experience of using this lens has been absolutely fantastic. It's small, it's compact, it can be easily put into a small camera bag, and it's not too large when put on your camera, making it easier to carry around and more likely for you to pick up going out when you're shooting. It's an incredibly versatile and powerful lens, one that I've already shot many of my favorite photos and videos on, and it's one I'm going to continue using long into the future. And in terms of my personal experience with the A7 IV, it is a brilliant lens to pair it with. I honestly believe the only reason that this lens doesn't have that GMaster tag on it is because it's an f1.8 rather than 1.4. Which honestly makes such a small difference, particularly at a wide angle focal length. And the pro to it not coming in with that GMaster tag is that the price is so much lower. I picked this one up secondhand like I mentioned, but there are many new options and it's a lot cheaper than some of the GMaster alternatives. This lens is a newer lens with a better autofocus motor, so actually the performance of this I found to be better than the 24mm f1.4. If I had the option out of the two lenses, I would actually choose this one rather than the 24mm. Definitely a high recommendation from me. I'll drop the link down in the description of this video if you want to check it out and learn more. And if you do want to check out my review of the 24mm, I'll also leave that down in the description, as that is a fantastic lens as well. That's pretty much it for this video. I hope you have enjoyed. I'm shooting this on the 85mm f1.8, which is also the lens I've paired this with, and I will be doing a review of that as well, so stay tuned to the channel. I'm out here currently in Vietnam. It's been an amazing trip so far. There's lots of content to come. Thank you so much for watching. If you did enjoy, make sure you hit that subscribe button and leave this video a like. Comment down below what you think of the 20mm lens. I'd love to hear your thoughts, and I'll see you all next week.